Welcome everyone to my channel, Beth Bell Live. I'm so happy to have you here. And I have a wonderful studio audience. And I also have all of you live with us. And if you're not watching live and you're watching on replay, please feel free to ask questions and we'll catch them for next week's show. Now, if you are watching live with us, put in your question into the comments and you'll be put in front of the queue. So it's really important if you're here with us live, we'll get all those questions answered. All right, we're going to dive in today. I have a feeling we've got some really juicy questions coming our way. And I'm going to start with one of the pre-submitted questions. My ex does not participate in our two young children's lives. How can I keep their father's presence so they still know their dad? I think this one's kind of filled with a lot of potential responses because I think what's coming to me on this is that sometimes there's a time for the dad to be involved, and sometimes there's a time for the dad not to be involved. And what I mean by that is that sometimes people earn the right to not actually participate. So I think you have to feel into what are the dynamics of my children and their father, and is it healthy for them? Is it something that they need to do? I appreciate you asking the question because I think it is so important that we have both parents involved in parenting. So I'm not suggesting that you're trying to not have him involved, but I do think that there's an element of using your discernment around what is that soul contract. I know a lot of times we get really caught up in the very traditional sense of we have to have a mother and a father, and that's ideal to have that representation. But sometimes the soul contract coming in with the child is that their father isn't going to be present or their mother isn't going to be as engaged. So while I'm not suggesting to exclude him, I am getting a little bit of a feeling here that there might just need to be some discernment around this. Now, the other thing I would say is structure. What's coming is that having a real structure around when are the visitation times, what are the activities, and it might mean that you have to help create some of the activities because as the mom, oftentimes we understand our children and we know what they need and we know sort of what to do, where to go, where their interests are. And so if the father isn't that involved, it may create a lot of friction when he actually is involved because he may feel like, I just can never get it right. I don't know what to do with them. I don't know where to take them. And so I also think you need to do a little hand holding there, or you're just tuning in to what do my children really need from their father and how can he best support them, and try to find those things that will make him successful when he's with them, as opposed to setting him up for something that might not actually help him feel like he's participating in a positive way. So I think that would probably be the best approach you could take towards it. If you have any other questions, though, please, if you're watching with us live, put it on the comments, and I'm happy to elaborate on that. And if you're watching on replay, you can still comment if there's something more you want to hear about any of the questions that are asked today. Okay, let's see. Do we have anyone from the live studio audience that wants to ask their question?
Yes, my wife and I were married about a month ago, and in the morning of the marriage, I had this foreboding reason or feeling that I was making a mistake. As the day went on, getting closer to the marriage, which was in the afternoon, and all the guests and the relatives arrived, it deepened. And I really felt I was making a mistake. Because of my commitment and all the people there, I felt that I just had to go through with it. And I did. And a month later, I feel I've made a mistake. I just don't know quite what to do now.
Yeah, I think what's coming through on that is if you're saying, if I'm hearing you correctly, that you were only together for a month and then you agreed to go into some marital contract. Is that right?
No, what I'm saying is on the day of the marriage,
Okay.
I felt I was making a mistake.
Okay.
And I went ahead with the marriage. We got married, and now it's a month later, and I actually feel more strongly that I had made a mistake.
Okay.
I'm just not quite sure what to do.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. Yeah. I think you have to trust that gut instinct, but since you are already in the marriage and you've made this commitment, I think then you have to start to think about what type of commitment do I want to make moving forward? And that would be about communication with the individual And I think you still have a commitment to communicate. So you want to communicate with them, what is it that is really weighing heavily on your mind? Because sometimes, I know this is going to make it sound really lighthearted, but sometimes there's like buyer's remorse. And sometimes that isn't a legit thing. Sometimes it means that you are actually just feeling into the magnitude of the commitment that you've made. So I would really spend some time with yourself, digging deep into what it is that is like in your, in your gut. Like, what is it that's making you feel like I made a mistake? Because it could be really legit. So you might want to feel into that and act on it. But it might be that it's just you sort of having that like, oh my gosh, I'm really in this for the long haul. And it's going to come from a wound from somewhere. Chances are it's going to be like an old wound that you have from previous relationships, whether it's from a previous marriage or a previous relationship where you've actually been very intimate with them and then had something happen that was negative for you. So I think, actually, do you mind if you could just, when you ask the question in the studio audience, if you can just stay in front of me, that way the energy, I'm able to actually communicate. Otherwise, it's really distracting for me to not have you present in the question. Thank you. So back to the question of, I think I've made a mistake, and you're a month into the marriage. And I think that there's a good chance that you didn't make a mistake and that you're just having a wound come up that's actually creating a lot of discord for you. And it's a beautiful, juicy time because you're still in a honeymoon phase where you can actually dig in and get to know your partner in a whole another way. So is that helpful at all? Or can you give me a little bit more, or is that help get you?
Well, I forgot to mention I have another girlfriend, which is an issue in the whole thing. And that's one of the reasons I felt that it was making a mistake to begin with.
Okay. So then you're not clear on what it is that you want and need in life. And I think then you need to be very clear with the partner that you're with exactly what's happened, and that you came into this marriage without an actual commitment to be with them in a monogamous relationship. So that's where I would head with that. I think the issue really lies with you because you're out of integrity coming into the relationship. And so that's going to take some really deep diving into why am I making a commitment to someone who I actually am not available to make that commitment to. And so I think that is an integrity issue for you to dig deep into and to really feel into why you would make that judgment call. And yeah, I think that's going to be really helpful.
Okay. So I've been single a long time as I've been on my awakening journey after a big life event a few years ago. But I'm now ready to meet someone, but old triggers of past sexual trauma keep coming up. Mm-hmm. And I'm guessing that's the mind trying to keep me safe. How do I let go of these old stories and trust myself to attract a good, loving partner?
I hear you. And I feel like that it might be the mind trying to keep you safe, but I'm also feeling like it's your body trying to tell you to release and to let go. So it's, I would say, if we want to talk about it from the mind perspective, it's something like deeply subconscious. And I think that's where you were headed with that comment. And when it's so subconscious, it's trapped within the body. And so you're in a place where you have this recognition now, and you've probably had this recognition for a while. And so it feels like what needs to happen is for you to tune in to really bringing in someone into your life that would feel safe. And it doesn't have to be a romantic partner, but it probably would be really helpful for it to be a male, someone who has masculine energy, someone who might trigger that response of fear and that response of having trauma, and letting them know upfront, hey, I'm actually experiencing this trauma that I feel like is really from a childhood or from an early sexual encounter, and ask them if they're going to be willing to hold the space for you, like no matter what happens. and hold the space for you romantically, not just, let me clarify what I'm trying to say here, because you could go and hire a professional cuddler, someone who's not going to have any sexual energy exchange with you. And that would probably help a lot just with the touch and to feel into your body and to not try to escape out of your body because of the trauma response. But I actually think that I feel like you'd be ready to move into something where if you found someone that was trusted, someone who was in a similar consciousness as you, and you said, hey, would you be willing to exchange energy with me, touch me physically? And also very specifically, could we focus on second chakra sexual energy? Not because and not with the intention that you're going to have sex, but that you're actually connecting your body to their body and that you're feeling the safety of what that feels like to be in connection energetically with someone in your second and even your third. So if you can find a friend in your spiritual community that you know that you would trust, and maybe it's someone that you don't know super well, but you just get a vibe about them. You're like, wow, I just feel like I would trust them. And ask them, say, hey, would you be willing to do an exercise with me? Can we feel into our chakras, and can we lay next to each other, and can we touch each other? And when you touch me, if I have a trauma response, will you be willing to just hold the space for me and not have that intense reaction for me? I think that is something that would really help you to feel it. And I will also say, like upfront, say, if it feels right for both of us, and if at any point it doesn't feel right for both of us, we can say, no, stop. This is not right. But I think really to communicate it, what it is, like get yourself to articulate, what is it that I don't feel good about when you touched me there, or when I allowed myself to open a little bit more here in my second and third chakra, I felt X, Y, and Z. Because that's the point, really, is to get to the feeling part of it. And to, I think, also have someone hear you and have someone else feel what it is that you're feeling so that you can articulate it and then together agree to let it go. But what I was going to say is perhaps asking them, like, would you be willing to do this with me multiple times? So maybe I'm just making it up, but maybe it's, could we do this, Saturday mornings at 8:00 for the next 4 Saturdays, just so you have something to look forward to. Because I think also when we open ourselves so vulnerably like that with someone, then we want more of that. And when that person's away, then it can create, we don't want to create an unhealthy attachment, but we want to create a safe attachment, not even attachment, but a safe connection where we can do it again and do it again and go deeper and then just see, how that feels. And then maybe it's finding another partner and saying, hey, would you be willing to, go do coffee and tea or whatever, and then just come back and just have, or maybe you go to the park, right? It doesn't have to be in your own home if that doesn't feel right. But yeah, I think opening up the idea of second chakra sexual energy to a totally different time-space reality is what would also be helpful, because we put so much, and I'm not necessarily saying this is you, but we put so much energy on sexual energy when, if we think about it from a second chakra energy, it's like the creative center of who we are, and feeling into that might help take away some of the trauma about where sexual energy has to lead to, or should lead to, or might lead to. Because I think there's a big pressure in that as well. When people start to feel like, oh, what's going to happen next? Like, are you going to want to take my clothes off? Are you going to want to, be inside of me, and all of those things? So just sort of get all of that into a different space, but be very sexual, and feel yourself have a physical response, a sexual physical response to someone, knowing that you're not going to act on it, at least not in that session. And who knows, maybe that person turns into a relationship. I think the more we can practice touching and eye contact and sharing energy, the more comfortable we get and the more we experience within our own bodies. And of course, to your point, like you're monitoring the mind, right? We're often in the mind. And so I think the scary part sometimes too is to be in the body and to allow ourselves to feel excited. Like, what if I do feel excited? and just releasing all of those ideas of that being bad or that not, or that leading to something. Is that helpful? Does that feel like it's in the vein? Yeah. Okay, great.
It's actually interesting with the last question, because my question is about cultivating that love and connection, but I've been doing a lot of focus and practice of doing that within my own body, my own being, not an exclusion of being in relationship, but as a precursor to opening even more in relationship. So I was wondering if you could share a little bit about what you find to be most supportive with cultivating that within your own being before stepping into relationship or as you step into relationship.
Yeah, I really appreciate that question. I'm not, again, some of the responses for the collective, but specific to your question, I think we all need to have sex with ourselves more often. And what I mean by that is pleasuring yourself is so important. And it's looked at as, the word masturbation, and it seems like it's such to a lot of people, like a naughty word. And I think a lot of that comes from childhood, because there's times when all of us have had a situation where we felt like we got exposed to something, meaning like we were exploring ourselves. I mean, every small child explores themselves. And when a parent sees that, at least in the old paradigm, hopefully not in the new parenting programs, but you're told to stop. You're told to wait, don't do that. That's bad. That's terrible. I mean, religion is really into this idea of celibacy or, whatever. I'm going to give the Roman Catholic Church a little bit of a hard time here. I mean, I think that we see how that plays out with Catholic priests, that then there's all this mischief and all these things that happen on the side when they're not allowed to actually have that pleasure, and they're not actually allowed to have that connection point. So there's so many things in the programs and in the collective, whether it's a personal experience that happened to you when you were young, getting caught, or it's the Catholic Church that's saying, or whatever religion you might have grown up in, all of them have some form of like masturbation being bad. And yet I think it's so much about like exploring yourself, touching yourself, physically touching yourself. Like, yes, we can just sit in the energy and like, make it all juicy for ourselves. But it's actually the touching ourselves. And I also feel like, and this might be more, again, not necessarily for you specifically, but for me and what is coming through is it's not about touching yourself and then just fantasizing about someone else. It's touching yourself and loving yourself while you're doing it. And like, oh, what do I like about this? What do I like about that? What do I, like, where are my zones? And then when you are in a relationship with someone else, you can tell them, right? And they can explore you. And then the energies are different with different partners. So sometimes what works with one person doesn't work with another. So I think, again, sometimes we just get so into like the sex, the orgasm, the like we need to be together. And again, I don't feel this for you specifically, because your question was very much about loving yourself and all of that. And I just feel like we need to encourage each other to have this intimacy within ourselves. That's not about, fantasizing about someone else. It's about like, what is it about myself that I love? And even when we have whatever, maybe extra love handles, again, I know this isn't for you, but sometimes you just have to like love yourself for like all that you are and for really being that. So I'm speaking more to the collective, like being like whatever it is you are, that fat roll that you dislike or that whatever, and just loving all of that as you touch yourself. And people don't talk about it enough. People, if they talk about it, they talk about it in a real intense way of like achieving something. And so it's loving yourself deeply and creating that sensory in your own fingertips and in your own body parts where you're then able to get to the energy center of it and cultivate more of that. And one of the ways that's really helpful is to think about that energy as like a ball of, and I know you know this, a ball of energy, right? A glow. Like if you want to make it look like sun, or you want to make it look like just literally a little ball, and putting it in your hands, like if you do this kind of thing and you're just like, like getting that energy. and then putting it into yourself. Just like, I've like, even when I just did that right now, it's like, phew, it just goes like, and I know that for some, it takes a little bit more time to get like extra sensitive to actually feel the energy come in. But you've probably played, to anyone listening, but you probably played that game where you put your hands together like this with someone else and you can feel the heat between the two. That's also just like doing that with yourself, right? And just feeling and being really connected to the energy in your hand and watching what that feels like. And again, it takes practice. It's not like it can just happen overnight. Sometimes, for some people it can, but I'm just honoring that it is a practice to start to feel the sensory in your hands. And so beyond the touch part, you can just literally go to just the love part and just inserting it in through your hand into your body. And it becomes just a really lovely thing. It can be just even foot massaging yourself, right? It can be, we don't have to make it just about the genitals. It can be, doing your own energy work and really touching yourself is the point, and feeling into the love that you have. Is that helpful? Did I answer the actual question? Okay, great. We have any questions from the live studio audience? I see we've got some live people on here. Let me know if any questions bubble up. And we have another in the studio audience. Okay, great.
So I've been in a recent state of some real deep sadness and loneliness. There's certainly a lot happening in the collective and just personally, and I'm also menopause. But I'm wondering if I might be in a real depression based on a hormonal or chemical imbalance. Or is it just my mind and old patterns? How do I know if it's just the mind or time for help from maybe microdosing of plant medicine or actually needing antidepressants prescribed by a doctor?
First of all, say I'm not a doctor, so I'm going to give you my intuitive downloads on this. Sometimes there's a really important place for Western medical and Western medicine, and that would be to get your hormones tested, and more than once. You know, I sometimes we have to really beg for these things because the doctors don't want to do the tests for X, Y, and Z reasons, but mostly because of cost, and they get dinged. But go in, get tested, find out where are your hormones. I think that if you're feeling like this has gone on for so long and you're like asking the question, like, is this depression? I think that you really should feel into that, because I think we also stigmatize. I really don't like a lot of the pharmaceutical, even though I come from that, but there is a time and a place for that. And sometimes we get so ingrained in a thought pattern because of our hormone imbalance, because of life circumstances, because of all these different things. And we just need that jolt. We need that break from the mind. And yes, plant-based medicines can help, but we are the medicine. And so I think going out there, which I know you're not suggesting that, is not necessarily the integration that you need to get to the blocks and to get to the shifts. And again, I can't suggest anything medical or even the microdosing per se, but I do think that microdosing can be really helpful. It's helped so many people. And it's even, okay, let's look at it this way. Coffee. Like, I think you don't drink coffee, but coffee has an effect on the brain chemistry, right? We know this, and people are addicted to coffee, and it actually creates a positivity a lot of times for people. And so that's what microdosing can do. You don't even necessarily know that it's within you, other than you're just a little more elevated. I think everybody today needs help with mental wellness, and it's not because they're mentally ill. It's not because their life is, shit. It's not any of that. It's that there's just so much coming at us right now. And to some of the previous questions, while the external world is creating this chaos that's just like really a whirlwind, we're not getting enough touch. We're not getting enough eye contact. Everything's being relegated now to AI, to robots, like even just to get something done. Like, we have to chat online with someone, as opposed to just have that human voice that hears you and you go, oh yeah, like I had something with the airline. Yeah, I hear you. And let me help you with that. So I think that the brain chemistry for all of us is potentially, I know this is a wide sweeping statement, but a little off. And it's off because our cortisol levels are so high in fight or flight because of the stress in our daily lives. Even if you're living a blissful life, there's still a lot of stress because there's whatever it is, road rage or this, that, the other, people who are unhappy, and all of those things impact us. And what we want to do is get that oxytocin levels high. And so that is, I think, about self-pleasure. That is about eye contact with others. That is about hugs. That is about creating connection and community with other people. And so when we're alone, I think a lot of us, and I'll include myself a little bit in this sometimes, is that I'm really good at being alone, but I don't innately like to be alone. But I'm good at it because I needed to build that skill set. And I think that's great to have the skill set. But sometimes then we need to push ourselves to go out. And that's where I think the sensitivity comes in. Well, who are we going to go push ourselves to hang out with, right? It's not just to go out to be social, which a lot of people do. Like, oh, I just want to have my calendar full. I just want to go out. I just want to have plans because I don't want to sit home on another night. Again, not necessarily you, but for the collective, that's what's happening right now. People are needing that deeper connection to others so that they can feel the connection within themselves and not be so isolated. So back to your question, I do think that seeking help from Western medicine is important. I think that it'll be frustrating for you. I think that knowing that you're such a spiritual being and you're already so awakened and so conscious, I really feel like there's going to be like a resistance to Western medicine because they don't see things like you see things. And I think going in, just get, if it feels right for you, just get really clear that, you know what, I'm just going to connect as best I can with whatever practitioner shows up in front of me. I'm going to explain to them in the best, I'm going to say 3D way I can, what I feel is happening and that I would like to have my brain chemistry tested, and get their support and tell them like, I really need support because I've done a lot of things and I know who I am. I know what I'm here to do, but there's just things that are really, really jostling me right now that are setting me off course. And I think just starting out with that, but not getting too deep either with them, because then you might lose them, right? Like they're professional at what they do, but they're not necessarily the awakened being that we wish that they were. So I think, just having that, like, okay, I'm going in for this with this expectation might also help the frustration level. But I definitely think it's all of the above. But the number one thing I would say is community with others, because we can talk about touching ourselves all day long until we like get that connection with someone else and we feel like we're seen and heard. Sometimes it's hard to cultivate that energy on our own. Sometimes it's hard to cultivate the desire to even want to pleasure ourselves when we just haven't felt it. So take it seriously. I know you do. I'm kind of saying it to everyone to take mental wellness seriously because there is so much happening. I've talked about this before also, that monitor, I call it mind monitoring, but monitor the media that you're watching, because a lot of times we want to just escape our lives and just get out there, get out of our own stories. And while sometimes that can be really helpful, it's like, what type of media are we watching and how much media are we watching? I used to think, oh, YouTube's kind of great because, I watch whatever I want to watch because I haven't had a TV, so I don't get exposed to like whatever NBC or ABC wants to show me. And then I started realizing, oh my goodness, well, the algorithms are so fine-tuned now that it's just showing me all of the same things. I feel like expanding your repertoire of who you listen to, what you're watching, right? Like really hone in on it. And then how do I feel afterwards? I know I'm going on a little bit about this, but I feel like when it comes to me, I want to share a story. Friends, remember the sitcom Friends? Like everybody loved it. And I thought it was great. I didn't watch it all the time. But what I realized was that it actually created a little bit of drama for people where they felt like, well, I don't have Central Perk to go to. Well, I don't have that group of friends, or I don't have that whatever, or Sex in the City, or whatever these shows are, right? Like they're fun while we're watching them. But I think to the subconscious mind, it actually has a greater impact than what we think. Because we think, oh, well, I should be doing that. Well, why aren't I doing that? Or why aren't I having champagne at lunch with, I don't know all the Sex and the City stuff. I think I've watched one episode. Why aren't I able to do those things? We have to just continually monitor, are we looking to our external world to validate who we are? And it's common. We do it all the time. It's just how we're kind of programmed. And then just coming back to, no, I'm going to watch a new conscious series, or I'm going to watch something that I know has an elevated storyline to it that matches my vibration, as opposed to just masking my mind. And so if we get beyond masking the mind and into a vibrational resonance with programs that help us stay elevated, as opposed to, doing the dips, I think that's probably going to be the most helpful to any chemical imbalance. But oxytocin, if we could put it in the water, I think that would be really wonderful. I'm kidding, kind of like how we did with fluoride, like let's get the oxytocin but it smiles even when we don't want to smile. It's hugging even when we're not sure if we want to hug the person. I mean, I've used discernment, but it's touching someone. Just that extra gesture can be magnificent for you, but also we don't know where the other people are either. And just having that moment of recognition is really helpful for everybody. So I think that's how we pollinate the planet with love, and we stay out of our own mind mess that we get ourselves into. Is that helpful?
Awesome.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right. Any other questions here? Okay, I've got one online and then I'll come back to the studio audience. I'm sick of being alone, but I am sick of being around people. I want to make myself feel happy. Gut health is my issue. Well, that's so interesting, because as I was answering the previous question, gut health came up and I didn't quite get to it. And so I'm so glad that I love how the energies work and sort of get us tuned in, because gut health is something that so impacts our mood. If you've ever done a cleanse, or you've stopped eating sugar, like completely stopped eating sugar, you will go through the most madness emotions that you can ever imagine when you really just like stop it all. And it's because your microbiome and your gut bacteria are running the show. Like they call it your second brain for a reason. And so that definitely can have a lot to do with the emotions that you're experiencing. And if you can clean that up, I know sometimes it's hard if you have a household of people and you don't want to make all of the all of those changes, but getting on a cleanse and just giving yourself a little reprieve. Now, I'm a big believer that if you can do 30 days, that's the best. And I know I'm kind of making that face because I know how difficult it can be for me to make that commitment. And once you get past that first week and you get through all the withdrawals, then you start to have just this intense gratitude for recognizing how much parasites, and we've all got them to some degree, and the microbiome in our gut are really ruling our hormones. And then question before, if you've got something like menopause happening, or a life stage change, or something that's also really pushing on your happiness factor and your happiness hormones, it can be a wild, crazy mess. It really sets you to do a cleanse. It like sets you back to ground zero within your gut. And then just really having an awareness about what you're eating will raise your vibration exponentially. I guarantee it. It just takes a commitment to actually eat that clean and to eliminate dairy and all of those. So I won't go too far into the cleanse because there's other people that have much better experience in talking about all the details of cleansing. I would definitely recommend that. You've also said that you're sick of being alone, but you're sick of being around people. And I think, again, it's who are the people that you're with. Sometimes we have a choice and sometimes we feel like we don't have a choice, meaning we go to work, perhaps, and at work, we oftentimes don't have a choice of who we have to be in a meeting with. We have to be in that meeting with that person. And that's where we have to get in there and shift the mindset, shift how we're viewing our interactions with people, how we're allowing them to trigger us. What is the role I play? Why is this person so triggering to me? Why do I not want to be around them? And identifying, because we know, let's just go to Psychology 101, that everyone's a mirror for us. As hard as that is sometimes, people are mirroring different things about ourselves, or they're mirroring something to see like, oh, does that still trigger me? Oh, how do I feel about that? How does that interaction make me feel? When you can take it internal, but not internalize it to a place of self-judgment, right? We don't want to get into that because that can get really rough too. But we really just get internal and just say, yeah, well, what is it? Why did I call this person in? Why did I call in that, whatever, crazy interaction at Starbucks or that beautiful interaction at Starbucks? And focus in on the beautiful people that are in your life. You know how this works. It's law of attraction. The more we focus on the things we don't want, the more we get of what we don't want. And so when you start finding the beautiful aspects of the people that you're really annoyed to be with, like you got to find something, you're going to start to feel their change too, because that's the beauty of That's the beauty of being human, is that when we shift inside ourselves, then we can shift other people. You know how this works? You go out there, and if you're smiling and you're having a great day, it's infectious, and people pick up on that, and they want to either talk to you, or if they're not there, they want to run from you. And that's great, because you want the people that aren't going to be in that vibrational resonance to run from you. You don't need them there. They're going to avoid you. And then you have to just not go into the mind mess of, why is this person avoiding me? Especially if it's someone that you have to deal with, someone that may live in your same household, and just be in charge of your own happiness. And then use discernment of, hey, who else is at a similar level? I want to spend more time with them and less time with the others, and getting out of this idea of any obligation that you think you might have to spend time with someone that you don't resonate with. Just really, we have to get into this place of, and in some cases, very nicely, we tell them, I'm not up for hanging out with you today for X, Y, and Z reason. And coming from a loving place, right? Like, I'm just not in the best place. And so I feel like it's for the betterment of our relationship to just not be in community or communion with each other today. And the more you speak your truth, and the more you start to find those things that make you happy about other people, I think you're going to see the shift and the change of who you attract and who starts to fall away in your life. Okay, hopefully that's helpful. If you're still on with me live here, please give me a little thumbs up on that. Okay. All right. Do we have any other questions from the live studio audience? Yeah. Okay.
I took a hero's dose of psilocybin recently. It was very profound, somewhat dark, a little bit scary, and extremely difficult to articulate what was going on, what the result was. But I have an 8-year-old, or we have an 8-year-old boy and a 12-year-old daughter, and I was interested in whether they could take that journey.
There's, I think, two things there. One is, if you've done a macrodose of psilocybin and you've had a dark journey, I think there's a lot of good stuff there to unpack. It doesn't always feel good while we're in the journey, and it doesn't feel good after the journey, but really getting into what was in there for me. And I know that it is difficult to describe sometimes when we do these journeys, but there's something there for you, something much, much deeper to dig into. I'm going to come back to that, but I'm also going to just touch on children. And again, I can't make any recommendations for anyone to do anything in that sense. But I think for a developing brain and children, we need to allow them to fully develop. And I think we need to allow everyone to make their own choices as to what's right for them. Spiritual medicines are something I really feel that we're called to. Sometimes we get exposed to them in odd ways, but it's something that you want to have a calling for. And I don't think that an 8-year-old has the ability to have a calling towards any of this, and because they're still very much developmental. Now, with that said, just a little story. I did sit with the Huni Queen tribe from the Amazon, and they involve their children in ayahuasca ceremonies at a very young age. And they get them involved in seeing the spirit realms. And so I think that's part of it, is the spirit realms, and part of it is just seeing our own stuff and breaking through our own programs and the things that happened to us when we were kids, the things that happened to us as impressionable young adults, and things that happen to us as adults. Everyone gets exposed to trauma. I don't want to be overly dramatic, but almost on a daily basis. It's just a matter of how it sticks and how we process it or we don't. I wouldn't start to involve children in ceremonies unless that's part of your culture and you live in the Amazon with the Huni Queen tribe. I just wanted to give that as an example, because I think that, yeah, there are examples where they do that, and it does work. Spiritual medicines for all of us are something we should feel called to, and something that we take seriously, but I don't really like the word seriously. I just mean that we take intentionally and we take ceremonially. In some ways, it can be a fun adventure. So I'm not saying it always have to be super serious, but we want to have a clean space energetically, spiritually. And so for you in that journey that felt dark, it could be your own stuff, or it could be that the space wasn't very clean, and that whoever you were sitting with, if it was in a more ceremonial type of situation that they weren't able to clean the space or hold the space for you, or the container to not allow other entities to come in and to play with the energies and to play with you and to play with your spirit and your soul. And so, yeah, I think medicines are really, really, really important to take seriously intentionally. Is that helpful or?
Yes.
Okay, great. Hugging can be complicated. Some people seem to use it as a way to offload their negative energy, which can feel overwhelming. I really value hugs that are mutual and supportive. However, I often don't know how I'll feel until I'm in the moment. What can I do about that? One of the things that I find really helpful is asking someone, are you a hugger? You can get a lot from what they say, and you can get a lot from how you feel, right? So sometimes just out of nervousness, like if we don't know someone, we're like, oh, let's just give a hug and let's just acknowledge someone. And while that's not bad, it's just, I think it's important to say, hey, are you a hugger? And when they go, no, or, they're like, and I've done it where I said, are you a hugger? Like as I'm hugging them, and I'm like, oh, and they said, no, oh gosh. Okay. And then I just apologize. And I say, I'm really sorry. I should have waited to hear your response. But what I found really fun about that, and again, this is just my personal experience, is that person then, when they left our interaction, allowed for another hug. And so they said, I don't ever hug. And so it worked out well. But there's cases where I have gone to hug someone and I know what you mean. You feel those little the little hooks that go in, and you're like, wait, what is that? And depending upon where you're at in your spiritual journey, there's a lot of things that you can do. Like if you really feel like it was a really negative interaction and feeling, I would go home and just sage yourself. Like that's also just a nice, smudging if you got Palo Santo or something like that. And just do that. I wouldn't give it a lot of attention, in that the more you dwell on it, like the more impact it can have on you. You may know from my book, Angels, Herpes, and Psychedelics, I've had a lot of experiences with black magic and about, do we say that it's real? Do we not say that it's real? And if we say it's real, then are we giving it more power than it should? And so I think it's about transmuting energy. It's about acknowledging that there is dark and acknowledging that there is light, and not necessarily looking at it as bad. So if you've hugged someone and you feel like, ooh, that energy was just not good, just sage yourself and then, noted like, oh, that person's not someone. And then if you encounter them again, like if they're part of a community or whatever, just have something that's true to you. I'm not suggesting you lie in any way, but something that's true to you that you can say to them. And maybe that is something like, today I'm really feeling like it's not something I'd like to do. And that's true, right? And it may be that you go and you hug someone else. And so there's, kind of that little jostling that you have to do. And since I'm just sort of extrapolating what that could look like, I don't have specifics for you, but what I'm getting at is having the feeling inside of you and trusting that. Because if you don't trust, like, oh, no, I don't want to hug that person, but then you hug them, then it creates a negative dynamic for both of you. And so I think just saying, you know what, I'm not feeling that right now. That's true. I'm not feeling it. I'm not feeling it with you right now, but you don't have to say you, if, that might come across a little harsh. Yeah. And I think overall, the more hugs we can do, probably the better. And again, kind of back to what we talked about earlier, I think it's about, where are you spending your time? Who are you spending your time with? And is it resonating for you? So if you're at a yoga studio and like there's nobody in there that you want to hug, then maybe it's the wrong yoga studio. So you're doing the right activity, you're just not necessarily with the right crowd. And so I think tuning into that will be helpful, and will start to get you into more situations, where it's not as complicated. And here's the other thing is, a lot of us who are really open and really resonating with our own self, we are such easy huggers. And we just have to acknowledge that some people, it's not good or bad if they don't want to hug you. They're just not there within their body because they've had trauma and they're not in touch with that trauma. They don't know why they don't want to hug you sometimes, and just honoring that. And I think when you just see them and you make the eye contact, you can do just as good almost with sincere eye contact in seeing someone and making them feel validated or helping them feel validated as much as you could a physical hug. Yes, the physical touch is always nice. It's always takes it to another level, but let's not discount the basics of eye contact and smiling and just going, oh, wow, thank you for sharing, and just acknowledging whatever it is that's on their mind. All right, is that helpful? Are you still with us live? Okay. All right. I think we're down to the end. Each week, I am so excited that you're here with me. I love having you on live. I also love having you on replay, and I would love to know what your state of the heart is, because here on the show, we get to the heart of the matter. So if you go to bethbell.me, you'll be able to fill out the state of the heart assessment. You'll get some great tips and tools and the following emails, and there's a plethora of resources on the website. There's the Awakening and Healing Handbook, lots of tips, tools, techniques, and modalities that can help you on your awakening journey. Many other handbooks. You can always schedule a one-on-one session with me as well on the website, bethbell.me. I'm wishing you bliss and love until we meet again next week at 11:11 on Sundays. Namaste.